There are few places that can transform you to a time in the past. The Seguine Mansion is one of them. Built in 1838, the mansion and its site are a testament to the beauty and culture of Staten Island. Located off Lemon Creek, formerly known as Seguine's Creek, Joseph Seguin built his Greek Revival mansion on the highest point of his roughly 200 acres of farmland. As a wealthy businessman, Seguin made his fortune from Staten Island's once lucrative oyster industry, an industry which has since disappeared. While Joseph Seguin built the mansion, current owner George Burke serves as the sole reason the mansion stands today. I had the pleasure of interviewing George as he spoke about his early memories growing up with the Seguin family and his lasting love for their home.
Back in those days, which were prehistoric in my time, I always loved this house. I knew the Seguin family for years and years. Growing up, I grew up with the girls. We rode here. They were in the horses. I was into horses. Mrs. Seguin, Bess, she was a great horsewoman from Georgia. And I used to kid her. I used to say, Bess, I love your house. One day I'd love to own it. And she would say, no, 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 my girls, they want it. It's going to be their house. Well, then I went in the military and I was gone for years. And I came back to Staten Island and I came down to see the house. Well, the house was in not the best of shape, but the grounds were overgrown. The basement was flooded. There was no heating system. The electric was shot. Bess got a hold of me and she said, George, you always wanted this house. She said, why don't you save it? And I looked at it and I said, oh, there's not enough money in the world to save this. So I said, okay, let me think about it, Bess. So I'm out walking around, I'm down by the boatyard. It was in the fall, just getting into winter. You couldn't see the house from down there. It was so overgrown. It was trees all over. You couldn't see shrubs, bushes, and whatnot. Well, the frost came, everything died, and there was nothing to block the view. And I'm standing down there in the field looking up, and I'm thinking, you know, this is the last of the great old houses on Staten Island. There's none left. There's no more plantations. And the Dutch have it written as a plantation because it was 200 acres. So I'm thinking to myself, I gotta do something. What am I gonna do here? So I got a hold of Bess and I said to her, Bess, what do you want for the house? She said, I want $150,000 for the house. And I said, wow, that's a lot of money. And for a house that's not in good shape, and at that time it was below the boulevard, which wasn't considered great property. I said, let me think about that, Bess, and we'll talk about it. She said, no, let's talk about it now. I'll tell you what, Bess, I'll buy the house, but you have to give me 2 years free because I'll move in and I'm gonna have to put it together, and I can't put it together on $100 a week. So she said, well, let me think about it. So I said, no, you wouldn't let me think about it, so now you tell me. She said, well, I thought about it. When are you going to start?
George would spend the next few years completely renovating the mansion from inside out. Due to the poor shape of the house, George was forced to live in one room, the front parlor, while the house was renovated. With no working heat, George relied upon a single fireplace to heat himself and the house. George battled sub-zero winters, termites, raccoons, and flooded basements during the years he spent in that little room, keeping the promise he had made to Bess Seguine. It would take nearly 65 gallons of paint and a little help from his friends to turn this once dilapidated home into the historic, timeless mansion it is today.
So it took about 5 years to get everything together where it was in great shape. All the interior that you see here, I was in Europe for all those years, and when I was over there, it was the time when, right after the war, people were giving stuff away. And I used to go down to Portobello Road, which was the big place in London where all the antiques are and everything, and every weekend was huge. The whole 3 or 4 blocks of solid antiques and whatnot. And there was this old lady in there, and she owned a big antique shop. And you had to climb over everything to get in. And Mrs. Murphy, her name was. And she always had about 2 or 3 dresses on. She didn't smell too well, but she loved her whiskey. And at that time, over there in England and in Europe, a bottle of whiskey was worth a new car. And me still being in the Air Force, I used to go around and say to the nurses, "What are you doing with your tickets? Because you're only allowed so much in the PX. Everybody was rationed. You couldn't go buy a whole case." So I used to go around and ask all the nurses, "What are you doing? Are you buying? Are you using your ticket this month? No, can I have it? Can I have it?" So I'd go and I'd buy all these bottles of booze, and I used to bring them down and barter like crazy on Portobello Road. They'd give you anything for a bottle of whiskey, because you couldn't get it. They haven't had it since the war started until the end of the war. Impossible to get it. So I used to go in, and I made a very good friend out of Murphy. And Murphy and I would sit there, and she'd make the tea, and we'd dump a little in, and we'd be drinking tea. Everybody would think we're drinking tea, but we got soused. So she would direct me to this, get this, buy that, George, that's good, this is that. And I'd barter back and forth with whiskey. I was running around collecting art and collecting furniture and collecting stuff, and I had it all in storage. And then, being in the military and being my rank, I had the government ship everything back for me. So I shipped it all back to my sister in New Jersey. I said, "Bess, there'll be some stuff I'm sending back. Could you store it until I come back, till I get home?" Well, a tractor-trailer truck pulls up. She had so much stuff, it was even in her bathroom. She said, "George, I'd put stuff in the bathtub." She said, "The neighbors were coming over, I was putting stuff." She said, "You said a few things." She said, "You didn't say a whole tractor-trailer of stuff." But anyway, it all came back, and it's here in the house. I had the whole house fixed up, and Bess, she kept calling me and saying, how's the house? It was her, I think, 95th or 90th birthday, I don't remember, but she was down in Georgia. And some of her old friends were throwing this big party in the country club for a big birthday party. They came up and they wanted some pictures of the house. So I hired a photographer to come and do starting at the driveway, coming up the driveway, all the gardens, coming up the front door, into every room of the house. And we put it on film. And I sent it with her friends down there. And when her birthday came and she walked into the country club, there was this huge screen hanging from the wall. And they had projected the front of the house, and it said, "Bess, this is your home." And she was so thrilled, she started to cry. She called me up and she said, "Oh, George, I've got to thank you so much. You made the house what I always wanted it to be, but never could afford to do it. And so she was quite happy with that. And I was happy with that too. I'm still happy with it. It's really the Seguine house. It was built by the Seguines, but if it wasn't for me, it wouldn't be here. So I would like it to be the Seguine Burke Plantation, because that's originally what it was. And that's what it should be named at, and it should be kept as that. And it should be part of Staten Island's history, and it should be where people can say, wow, this is what Staten Island was, this is what it was like. This is a part of it. You come through the gates and you say, I'm in another world. I'm in old Staten Island. Because I'm willing to leave everything exactly as it is. And if the board has got the right people, they could run it. Let tours come through it. They could have a docent, or they could have somebody dressed in the Scarlett O'Hara days and taking people on tours through it, like they do down south to all those big old plantations. I could do the same thing here. And that's what I'd love it to remain and stay as. And it would be great, because we have nothing like it, absolutely.